Hey, welcome back.
What's up?
Y'all missed Cory singing. Please do it again.
It was more of a cheerleader.
Oh.
Because you were like, ready, let's go. And I was like thinking back to like, how funky is your chicken or whatever, you know. Anyone else?
Before we get going, could you just like turn your camera down and show everybody your amazing new shorts?
I don't really want to because I'm an adult. All right. So I've got my.
Oh, look how bright and colorful they are. We were just chatting.
Season style. Yeah. They're on clearance. All right, with my kid's favorite brand, and so I'm wearing. I only have Zoom stuff today. There's no in-person meetings, so I'm dressing like a child.
I feel like we could make a transition out of this, but we won't.
Oh, there's something about childlike simplicity.
That's true. There it is. Thank you for doing it, Cory. It's so amazing. All right, so 1 minute in, we'll get into the content now. We just thought we would have a little fun. It's been some weeks since we've been together.
I missed you.
When you hear this, it'll be smack in the middle of the fall. But for us, we're still in shorts and t-shirts in the summer.
Yeah, that's a good point. But you never know in Kansas City. It could be snowing. It could be 95.
That's true. Yeah. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the last several episodes if you track with us that way. But we did a whole little series on planting the gospel, got some new fresh voices in there. Just a recall back to some tools that we've looked at, whether that was the story diamond, the 5 thresholds of conversion, what did I tell you? DBS, the frog questions, the whole gospel, 4 G's of gospel fluency. All of those are simple, podcasts that you can go back, listen to. Really helpful around that phase of the missionary pathway called planting the gospel. Today's just a one-off episode. Cory barely knows what we're talking about, which is not out of the order. You saw that coming. But
I thought he was going to push record and then tell me, and it was close. We're about 15 seconds difference of that.
I did give you a heads up, but I've had this sort of desire to do just this one-off episode on this idea of simplicity. Cory and I have been talking about it, not on the podcast lately. And I thought, let's just do this. Let's just talk about it. This episode is for disciple makers and microchurch leaders in Kansas City. We're thinking about you first. Not that we don't always. I just mean sometimes we do these lofty episodes about network leadership and all those things. But this one is something that's been on my mind. And it's just this idea of how do we return to simplicity in all things. Why is that important, Cory?
Complicated things don't multiply.
That's true. We do say that.
Complicated things suck. No, sometimes. It's hard to wrap your mind. I mean, can your kids...
Can they do complicated
Can they
things?
do the complicated things? No. Or can they wrap their mind around complicated?
No.
You know what I've got...
I mean, eventually. But
yeah. I mean,
it's fatiguing for them.
And I was gonna say something about smart kids, but I like your kids and they're smart, so I want to make fun of you, but not your kids. So I'm stuck in this weird spot now. So my wife is a family medicine doctor, and one of the things that makes her really effective, I'm going to take 0.3% credits on this. All right, early on, she would start explaining all these complicated things to me. And I would say, stop. Can you do this in 20 seconds? I can't understand the words you're saying. And I've got 20 to 25 seconds worth of attention. And so can you do this? And
how long was your wedding? 20 seconds.
Ish, yeah. All I know is that Susan's incredible at being able to explain these complicated things in very simple terms. And so, yeah, that's another example of if we really want anyone and everyone in all places everywhere to be able to make disciples, you can't give them a playbook that is giant. And it's a
massive textbook.
Yeah. I mean, that's just not how it works. And so in one sense, and we're going to go a variety of ways, complicated ways today in this podcast. Now, in one sense, the adage that is in all movements, that simple things multiply, is essentially what we have to get back to.
Yeah. I've been feeling this pullback because for the last 6 years, we've created a bunch of cool stuff.
Yeah.
And we have a bunch of tools. In fact, if you go to kcunderground.org/toolkit and you sign up for the little thing there, we have these 5 phases plus a section on like kids, family, parenting, disciple making. And under each of those, there's 5 or 6 tools and some podcasts in each of the phases of the disciple maker pathway. And we have more. And occasionally we go in and we go, are these the ones we want up here right now? Do we need to add more? Like, how many can you add before it's too much? So I'm really grateful because we're naturally sort of, we just learned something. Let's pass that on.
Yeah, let's help someone figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
That's kind of our thing.
And that's good. I think that's important. Yeah. Like, in fact, maybe that's a part of like our ethos is like, as we learn, we create a simple tool, we pass it on. And I think we'll always do that. But at some point you got to go, are you just making stuff to make stuff or is it helpful? So when we talk about this pull back to simplicity, we're not saying do less. We're just saying like sharpen the focus. Like there are times where you got to slow down and go, have we overcomplicated things? Are we working harder than we need to?
Yeah. Yeah. Like the tools are cool. But they serve a purpose. Like the idea that the simple, let's just say simple concept that we want people to talk about Jesus. That's the simple concept. You can't plant the gospel, make disciples if you never talk about Jesus. So, okay, how do we have the simplest of tools to help people step into that? Okay, we use this FROG acronym to help people figure out, like ways that they can bring Jesus up in normal conversation. Not everyone's going to need that at all times, but it's kind of one of those, it's here, let's insert it in the moment during training. But we can't do that with 40 tools,
right?
It's more like, okay, how do we keep things so basic? And then when we need to, hey, we're going to bring this in because it was helpful in certain ways. But it's easy to get down that road and have way too much stuff, right? In general. And I know that like on the surface level, we, the simplicity of multiplying disciples in churches, really like there's the Discovery Bible Study tool, so simple. On the surface, it's like, okay, that's really, really simple and easy. But then we just like, man, we want to complicate things. Sometimes there's like a behind the scenes where you need something like
this is my next point. I can tell you about.
Okay. Because there is a reality of behind the scenes, and that's movements globally. It's not just, hey, look at this organic thing that's just pop, 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 pop. Like there really is support systems, and structure that's not structure like in the Western church where it's this heavy walls and roofs. But it's like what our friends in with the young adult world right now are it's like a riverbanks to a flowing river as opposed to building structure of a wall. It's like what God's doing. like you're not going to be able to control that, right. But there is some like, okay, we're coming alongside. We're helping steward what God is doing. And there's a reality of that. But man, in the end, you can get caught in that and forget the simplicity.
Yes. And sometimes we do. That was the next point that I had was like, but life feels complex. But that doesn't mean just because life is complex, it doesn't mean we abandon simplicity and start doing harder things. Like I was just prepping for this morning, thinking about it. It's like, yeah, but like I got my kids and like it's hard. Like sometimes like life is messy, things get hard. We're working with our microchurch and people have a hard time with each other and life gets hard. It's like, plus I have a job and we have family rhythms and there's this and there's this. But all of those things are just like they're layers of life. And the simpler we keep them and the more we stay sharp on what Jesus has called us to do, run everything through that lens of the Lordship of Jesus, then it helps us, navigate the quote unquote complexity of life. Anyway, I just want to tell you where this actually came from. I think we were feeling it like as we were talking about our network, and you reach a certain size where you're like, oh, do we have everything? Are we holding it all well? So we were talking about simplicity, and it felt like this sort of divine moment. So credit to my neighbor Joe for training me,
shout out,
discipling me in simplicity. So Tuesday nights, most Tuesday nights we hang on my driveway or their driveway, backyard, whatever. There's a group of a few of us that we get together, and
guys in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're doing life together. We're holding, the moments of life. What does it look like to parent in this season?
Mm-hmm.
What are we learning from each other? What does it look like, to have healthy marriages? We just talk about it all.
Yeah.
Like literally anything and everything. So sometimes, it gets tense, whatever. And sometimes it's real light and fun. This particular night, like 2 months ago, well, at this point, I don't know how many months ago it was. I don't even remember how we got on the conversation or the topic. But it was something about how we study, how we learn. And Joe is like quick as a whip on everything. I'm just always laughing at the
such
pace.
A great Southern.
Yeah. Quick as a whip.
Quick as a whip.
The pace at which he comes up with comebacks and like little comments that just keep us rolling. Smart enough that he skipped a grade in high school, that sort of thing. So Joe lands in college at 17, and he was like, I'm going to tell you, I'm a smart dude, but when I got to college, it was like, whoop, this is a new world, and he was saying about, like I didn't know how to study. Like I was just smart enough that I just breezed through high school. And this was like crazy insightful to me. He goes, I went to the library to study how people studied. I was like,
yeah,
I would never have thought about doing that. I just would have felt stuck. Right. But he's like, even in that, I was still trying to figure out how to like study, learn to pass these tests, because suddenly I was stuck. So he has this professor that he goes to. He's like, hey, can you like help me out? I need help trying to figure out what to do here. And he said, his professor said, Joe, imagine that the professor in any of your classes gives you the option to come in with an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper in which you've written down all the notes that will help you pass that test. So you got to take the last 4 to 6 weeks, whatever it is, and condense it down onto one 8.5 by 11. And you can't like write little tiny, so you got to make notes that will help you infer some things, say directly some things, recall other things, etc. And he goes, so I just started studying that way. I started like, I could never take these into an actual test, but I just would always force myself, grab the 8.5 by 11, write it down, condense, assimilate the knowledge, whatever. And I was like, that is brilliant. So I'll just hit pause, like in case you wanted to say anything profound here. Otherwise, I'll keep going.
Wow, no pressure. No, I've got a couple thoughts of, and I'm trying to think how relevant they
are they related to this at all?
I think they are. Because one of it's just practicality, and then one of it's like actually how I think humans think. Practicality. Obviously, you need simple. You need something. I'm trying to read your face, so like, oh no.
I'm waiting with bated breath.
Because, so actually, when I was in like grad school, one of the first things I was taught was how to read a book in an hour, and it was really great. They were basically saying like, hey, most people think all these like, I'm here for the book, like. I'm going to, what every word that the book says, they dictate everything. And they're like, no, flip that. The book's here for you. Right. And it's like, if you can create this, like, flip in your mind to say, okay, I can breeze through a book, but I can learn how to essentially, and we read a book called, I think it was called Reading on the Run, but it's like this, you kind of, it's almost like speed reading concepts, but the idea is like, you really understand the framework of the book, the table of context, the introduction, like the argument, you really build that framework in your brain. And then you can really flip through things fast because now there's like some meat that you can stick on the bones. A lot of times when we read or do anything, we start with the meat and it has nowhere to go and just kind of becomes a mushy. You're
building the framework as you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in some ways, I'm like, the way that actually I think a lot of us can work is like, if you just simplify things, there's a framework. There's a framework for things to stick where you're building a framework of simplicity that doesn't mean it's shallow or never goes anywhere. It actually is foundational to knowledge and knowledge building. So that's like the one thought. And
that's really profound, Cory. Yeah.
Wow. See, I told you wanted profound, and I got it for you.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to go down this on a personal journey. Yeah. And in fact, I might save this because I think it'll tail on that. So I'll go back to you.
Yeah. So I took this idea immediately and I was like, well, this feels sort of like divine providence, appointment, whatever the phrase is there, of like, I felt like through my neighbor, Jesus gave me something. It was like, hey, all those conversations you've been having lately about simplicity, this is a new tool, the 8.5 by 11 exercise. And it was like, well, how do I start thinking about all that we do through this 8.5 by 11? So like we have a 16-week long historically cohort that we were training hub teams. And I was like, what if I had to train a hub team with only an 8.5 by 11? I was thinking about the disciple maker pathway. And I was like, what if I had to simplify this down to an 8.5 by 11? What would I put on it? I was thinking about our own microchurch. I actually started doing this with some of our gatherings where it was like, rather than overcomplicating this big gathering, it's like, what's the frame, what's on this 8.5 by 11 that I would, shape a gathering around. And so it just became a practice, like a little exercise I was doing with everything. So yeah, the personal journey is somewhere a little over about a year ago when this comes out. I was starting to feel this like pull of, okay, I think Jesus is asking me to engage in a new context. And I began to think about like where my dad is in the Lansing State Prison working. And then another friend of ours is working with youth detention centers. And our friend with the youth detention center is like, I think he's got teammates. Dad feels lonely. I'm feeling more of a pull there. It's like, so I texted my dad and I was like, hey, we have 3 to 5 microchurches that are active there. And that would be the point where we would go, okay, you need a hub team there. So I said, what do you think if we train a hub team inside the state prison? And he was like, well, actually, I was just praying that you would call me to talk about coming to work at the state prison. I was like, what?
Because he's been in the prison setting for a while.
Like 8 years.
And they've been making disciples, and there's Discovery Bible studies and all this stuff. But now you're like, what we need to more intentionally have a team inside that's equipping others in the prison, right? So that ecosystem. So that's what you're talking about as far as a hub.
Yep.
Love it.
Yep. And so I was like, well, that feels like confirmation. So it took like about another 6 months. Rob decided, hey, I'd like to join you. And so we're, let's do this journey. Let's go train a hub team. So I hadn't talked about that much, but like let that story emerge for a little while. But about 3 months ago, when this comes out, basically the staff at the prison was like, hey, all of the volunteers that are coming in, you can't bring anything, like nothing. So we have to borrow a Bible when we get there. And it was like, oh, this is coinciding with this moment, where we're talking about simplicity, where I got my neighbor teaching me how to like study and learn and think through, and this 8.5 by 11. And it was a moment where it's like the only resource I have when I show up in this space is what's inside me. It's just me and Rob, which is a pretty solid resource too. And these guys. So it's like we show up together and we just have to show up and be together and go, what did we learn? What's true in us? What are we so radically committed to that it always comes to the surface? That's really what was happening. It's like, I got all this other stuff that I could tap into, but like there's some stuff that's just sort of like, I say it so much, I think about it so much, it's just coming up. But what I started doing is every week before we would go in, I would just fill out like an 8.5 by 11. This is where we were. I think this is where we should go next. I'm going to write it down. So hopefully I'll remember it tomorrow. And I don't have a photographic memory. So it's like, I had to keep it really simple. Like I should probably teach this tool, but I can probably do that without notes and just see what sort of comes up in the moment as we wrestle this idea out together. And so like, that's been the work that we've been doing over the last several months, is just showing up and just through the simplicity of like where we were, where we are, and a reminder of where we're going.
Yeah.
I got these one sheet of paper that just is constantly sort of slowly moving us forward.
Yeah.
And so it felt like, man, I'm just going to bring that up.
Yeah.
As a tool to like encourage disciple makers and microchurch leaders in our network. When you're thinking about discipling your kids, what would you write on that 8.5 by 11? Stop panicking about it and go, I got one sheet of paper. If this is what I could give them, this is the stuff that will come up and out. If I'm equipping a new disciple maker, I got one sheet of paper. I don't have to worry about, I can go get access to all those other things, but I don't have to.
Yeah.
What are the things that like really stick out, that the few things that you just be radically committed to, that you would take with you into any context, no matter what?
Yeah. Yeah. I have three things in my brain. Yeah. Number one, it's like dramatic. I hit the microphone. Our friend Norris Williams. I think I referenced this a while back. But Norris, we've interviewed him once or twice. Incredible dude. Been in the missions world, disciple making movement world for a long time. But I heard him say this recently, and so now it's weeks and weeks later, months and months later, that you guys might be hearing us again. But he said, that's really common in movements. We start to add too much stuff, and essentially he says like movements propel forward almost always by pruning and not by adding more. And that is super encouraging, convicting, enlightening. It's like, yes, you're not going to keep adding more and more stuff. You're going to prune. And so you could bring a bunch of tools into the prison.
John 15, man.
Or you actually probably need to prune it. So it's simple. It goes back to simple. So it's reproducible. It's structural. In many ways, today it's a lot of incarceration talk today, because so much of my early days in seeing multiplicative disciple making were in the county jails. And for those of you who don't know, the jails and the prisons are radically different settings. Jail is temporary. Usually people are there for days to weeks to months, and every once in a while you'll have people there longer waiting for trial or something like that, but it's fast, right? Prison's an ecosystem that's long-term. Yep. So you're not just trying to go in there and multiply disciple making efforts, and you're trying to really raise up an ongoing team that could be there from 3 to 20 years to life. Yeah. Truly, right? Yeah. So it's a whole different ecosystem. But my friend Phil Alessi, and we've had Phil on a ton over the years, a huge mentor of mine, tons of stuff he's done in county jails. And that was like, his story is so similar to your story. Like, they were going in and they were meeting with groups of people, and it was so good in the jail, because this happens all the time. They have changed rules just like that, right? Because they don't care what other people think. They've got to do their thing, And so they said, you are no longer allowed to see groups of people. You can only see one person. So he thinks it's all getting shut down, but really it was God's way of simplifying it back to that one piece of paper. And so he started meeting with one dude, a guy named Donnie, and teaching him discovery Bible study, and they would read the word together, and he would go and reproduce it, right? Same idea.
Sorry. It's the story of the Chinese church too, and the mass explosion. Like, we prune away all the Western missionaries. Ordinary people are released to go, and
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much the story of all movements, right? In some capacity. But what I got to go in, I got to learn from those lessons. And so those early years partnering with ministry here, it's still my favorite resource I've ever made. It was one piece of paper. It had front and back, because the front
that counts. Still,
but the front was made to write on. So it's kind of traditionally in movement circles, there's like, it's essentially a discovery Bible study that's personal. 4 columns. It was like writing out the scripture in your own word, observing what it says about God, Jesus, and ourselves. I will statements, and then who you're sharing it with, how you're going to be a blessing to people. So, right. So it's just like, you can write it all out. And on the backside was, 10 scripture lists, about a tiny little section that says, you can do this. Here's how to do a discovery Bible study, right? Like, it was the simplest tool I've ever done. And this became contraband. That's not really contraband. It just became things that like were passed around, and it was passed under, cells and everything all over the place. And that's like, it's still the same. It's all it was the word of God in a very simple way. So in some ways, like, I'm so drawn to exactly what you're talking about. We always have to keep going back to simplicity. We always got to keep going back to simplicity. And so like this idea of one piece of paper can be very literal.
Yeah.
Or it can be very like, it can be abstract and figurative in your brain. It's like, how am I going to reproduce this to my kids, to the, so that's why missionary pathway in some ways exists. The language of missionary pathway. It's like movements in these, like one piece of paper.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the idea that we're getting. Everything's got to be simple.
Yeah. So that's it for today. Honestly, I mean,
we just want to keep it simple.
Yeah. I don't want to overcomplicate this.
Absolutely.
I mean, I just wanted to, like, in a way, remind us all. And I've been leading these disciple maker pathways with people and doing that Matthew 28 exercise, which I think we did an episode on, where it's like, what did Jesus tell us to do? What do we often do instead? Yeah. And then how does that end up slowing us down because we're trying to carry all these things? And I don't mean we should just sort of burn everything to the ground. It's like all of that stuff can still fit in the toolbox. And when you need access to it, go get it.
Yeah.
But it's more about when you need it, go get it.
That's right.
So this sort of brings us back to wrapping it up in the sense of, we don't always give hey, try this, think about this, consider this. This week I want to give you consider this. Try the 8.5 by 11. Like, grab a sheet of paper and just think through as a disciple maker, like, what's Jesus calling me to do in this context? What am I radically committed to? And that other stuff that, like, what I'm doing is I do this exercise where I'm like, yeah, but I go, if it's a yeah, but I can consider it, but I want to narrow down to like this is essential.
Yeah.
I wouldn't not have this on the paper.
Yeah.
And just a few questions of like, what are you holding on to that you don't need to anymore? Where have you complicated what Jesus made simple? And, consider like, hey, my next microchurch gathering, I don't have to think through all of the stuff. If I just had an 8.5 by 11, I had to teach and think through it through this lens. I'm going to put it on this paper in simplicity because I want them, just like you did in the jail, to be able to give this away, to do this immediately. And again, you can run this through all of life. Like, I'm doing this in my parenting. Again, by the time this comes out, we'll be solidly in the middle of the fall semester. But like, I'm doing this for the fall of going, what do I want to do with my kids in a weekly rhythm through the fall to like help them bend their rhythms and ways towards Jesus?
Yeah.
I'm going to put it on an 8.5 by 11 because I can go back to that. What are the things we're radically committed to? And let's keep it simple. Final thoughts?
dbsgroups.com/spiritual-families is a single piece of paper, which, is a microchurch format in a sense. It's like, so that's one, dbsgroups.com/spiritual-families.
Yeah. So go try it. Let's keep it simple and let's keep multiplying. I had something in my throat and it sounded funny there.
You're just getting emotional.